the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashlie Walton, joined by Sergeant Walton. Clint, how are you?
I'm excellent.
You know, I used to work in the most toxic work environment, and I can remember many times where the doctor's husband would come into my office and he would stand there for hours. And this was every day almost. And he would just stand there and watch myself, and he would watch my staff, and I would literally point it out, like, you're just standing here watching. Don't you have something that you have to do? And I remember him not giving two fucks, right? Like, he just didn't care. And thinking back to it, especially knowing some other things that was disclosed to me from himself and his wife, it was probably a lot worse than I thought that it was at the time. And I think that for first responders, a lot of the times you don't realize the hidden stress of being watched and judged in the public as a first responder.
Yeah, there's always eyes, and this is something that's been instilled in me, and I know most, police officers going through the academies is you're in the fishbowl. You are the goldfish in the fishbowl where all eyes are on you at all times. Whether you think they are or not, everybody's always watching you. And I think over time we start kind of, if you know you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, you're not having to worry about it. But I think we also forget of all the negative dynamics that come with it and the perception problems that are there that people are always proposing and use us as a political pawn on a regular basis.
Yeah, let's face it. I think that for people like myself who respect authority, respect the Constitution and the law, that it's very evident, and I am incredibly aware anytime that I see a police officer step into my sphere of influence when I'm out there in the world. And so a lot of times too, when I think civilians think about law enforcement being under the microscope and being watched, you think about critical incidents, you think about the body cam footage. But if you're not a first responder, then you don't understand that even the mere action of wearing a uniform, and let's say you needed to go grab something for the department at Home Depot or the grocery store really quickly, then that too is you under the microscope. Everybody is watching and paying attention. And it's really interesting because I'm thinking about my own implicit bias where I will be in the market, usually with you, and then you see a group of firemen getting ready to go make their little fireman dinner and they're all grocery shopping. Totally different impression when I see them, because when I see them, I'm thinking about basically what they're getting ready to go and cook, right? I'm not thinking about any of the other things that a usual typical civilian who maybe isn't married to a police officer might be thinking.
And it's something to think about. And I was thinking about this as you were talking, is how many times you list the environment and you look at an officer and you see an officer walk in, is we automatically, and we do this all the time against ourselves, is like, I'm looking at this officer, I'm like, how are they as a person? What do they do? I wouldn't want this person to come to my house to help me if I needed that emergency help because of XYZ.
You're criticizing them like that?
And mentally I am.
Really?
It's like, yeah, because I look at them like, well, why is this person, like this law enforcement officer, I'm like, they seem kind of useless to me. And I'm being judgmental in that instance. Or I drive by a traffic stop and I see them sitting in their car while the person's sitting in the vehicle and they're all by themselves and they're using their computer. They're totally focused on their computer. I'm like, that's a big officer safety issue. Like, you start making these judgments based off of your own biases, your own experiences, because you see what you've been exposed to. And that's just me from being in law enforcement, judging other law enforcement. Like, just imagine what the public perception is when they see us as individuals walking into those locations.
The psychological concept here is ongoing public scrutiny and identity hypervigilance. And it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I'm trying to relate, right? That's what we do as humans. And so I'm thinking the only time that I have ever felt any kind of negative scrutiny when it comes to somebody that I see in uniform like that And this could not be nationwide. This could just be our little local Tri-City area, but something that drives me crazy where I automatically roll my eyes both on the outside and the inside is when I see a CO who's just out there in the market, grocery shopping, wearing his uniform, thinking like he's tough shit.
Yeah, that's that's something. And so in that instance, there's some, like, I think of it when I worked for the prisons, like I would get ready for the day and have to go to the liquor store to get gas or to get a snack or to go to the grocery store because I didn't have any other clothes and I have it rolled down. Most instances aren't like that. I mean, I live 3 hours away from home. I didn't have a change of clothes. Like most of them, they live locally and they're...
Well, yeah, we see their uniform. We know exactly where they work, which is like 10 minutes away from where they're at in that moment. And, you know, it's not to bash COs. It's just that type of behavior is something I see play on repeat with COs in our area. So it's something that I can identify to where that scrutiny in my mind does come into play.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's where you're doing it for attention more so than you're doing it because of a necessity. Like I think of it as like when I'm at work and I go into the grocery store because I need a bottle of water or I need a snack or whatever it may be. Like I'm not going in there to be frivolous. Like I'm going in there because I'm working and I have nowhere else to go to do that within my general vicinity where I'm working. And that's the same thing kind of goes with firefighters is like they have their station over here. They're grabbing their food to cook their dinner together and going back to their fire station to do that. And I think it's when you start seeing the off-duty instance of like, what are they doing?
Well, yeah, because there's a big difference, right? So you and I at the onset, at the very beginning, and we had an incident happen back when you were first a police officer, and prior to that, you were a CO, which gives me a little bit more privilege to be able to kind of bash on like that type of behavior, I suppose. But we went to the market and we left the market because there was somebody that was a prisoner, basically. It was very strange because like the distance of everything was weird, but I'm thinking about the only instance where I think it is appropriate. So you and I have had conversations basically about you not being in uniform when not necessary. And you actually do a great job at making sure that there isn't any reason why you should be identified and then followed home as a police officer. And it's an officer safety thing, but then it's also an officer realizing how important it is for nobody to know where his wife lives, right? However, there are instances where it does make sense to me. So the whole CO thing, absolutely not. You're just, there's absolutely no reason. You go into the prison, you have your own locker, you change, like that's what you should be doing. Otherwise, I literally can't think of any other reason why a CO would be out and about, you know, not changing when they're at the prison. The only time that I do think that it's appropriate is when I see police officers that are motor and they ride their bike to work, right? And a lot of those guys, they aren't going to go change out at the station. They literally like ride their bike and then hop on it after briefing.
Yeah, and it's the same mindset when I was a detective. Like I have my police shirt on, not a uniform, but just like identified for, I work for San Ramon Police Department. I have my gun on my hip. I have my badge on my belt. And Ashlie would say, hey, can you stop by this store and grab this for me and on your way home? And it's such a few and far between thing, but like I'm driving a department vehicle and I'm going home. Like there's a different understanding when it comes to something like that, where there's no excuse when you see these, now I'm going to say probation officers or the COs, and they're wearing their uniform when there's no need to whatsoever. They're driving their personal vehicle. Like that's just it's almost like having the military. And this is one thing is I've heard this before is like, why, when you have people of the military showing up in their uniform and they have all they're just showing up in their uniform, they have no baggage, they have nothing, they're just showing up in their uniform. In all reality, they didn't have to. Like they're showing up in their uniform because they want that attention. And I get that. But at the same time, when you're not recognized as of I'm military or I'm not military or I'm a first responder or not, you're doing it for more of a subconscious attention grab.
Yeah. You know, I just thought of something. when it comes to the implicit bias thing, and the only other time where I have judged a police officer, he was in uniform walking into the store, obviously enjoying that ego trip. And he had his keys on his keychain walking, and all you hear is clink, clink, clink. That's what draws your attention and make you turn around and realize, oh, there's a police officer. And in my mind, I'm like, wow, what an officer safety issue. I can guarantee you he wears that key ring as he's out there on patrol. And like, what if you are looking for a suspect and they find you before you find them? And there are small things like that. That are so important to make sure that you're correcting, whether it's self-correcting or as a leader in law enforcement, correcting with anybody that you might be working with. And when it comes to the scrutiny aspect of things, I think that it's important to just realize that if it's something that bothers you, and it should, that there are things that you can do in order to be able to minimize it. And something you're great at, Clint, is actually actualizing yourself as a human when you show up in the world. And especially when you're in uniform, you do a great job at taking pride in yourself and also the police department that you represent. And I think that's why you've built such strong community relations.
No, thank you, baby. Like we forget, like, I think we put on our uniform and we forget, we think we're supposed to be, this higher level than everybody else. And that's not the case at all. Just because you're experienced, just because you have training, just because you are this law enforcement presence for these people, you can represent not only, hey, yes, I have this knowledge and experience, I'm here to help, but bringing in that human nature side of being understanding. I don't care if it's the most severe incident or the most minute incident. It's important to that person in that moment and being able to show up for them in that instance when they call you.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.